My name is Carly, I'm 27 years old, and what I'm about to share with you is not just a story. It's a memory etched into my bones, a night that redefined everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and justice. Before I begin, please subscribe to the channel because some stories like this one deserve to be heard all the way to the end. Now let me take you back to that evening. The house smelled of lilies and expensive wine. Laughter floated through the hallways, blending with the clink of glasses and the faint hum of a jazz band playing near the garden. My father's 60th birthday party was in full swing, a grand affair organized by my stepmother, Clara, who loved nothing more than to display her version of perfection. Everything had to be flawless. The silverware polished, the chandeliers gleaming, and the guest list filled with people who mattered in her world. Politicians, old money, and family friends who whispered more than they smiled. I stood by the corner near the buffet table, clutching a plate that held nothing but a dry piece of bread. It wasn't a mistake. Clara had made sure of that. She'd leaned toward the waiter, her voice dripping with that sweet venom only she could master, and said loud enough for me to hear, "Give Carly a piece of bread. That's all she deserves. She's not really one of us after all." The waiter hesitated, but one glance at her, and her diamond-crusted glare, made him comply. My stepsister, Maya, swirled her champagne and smirked. "Pathetic as always," she said, her lips curving in that perfect little smile she'd inherited from her mother. I didn't reply. I'd learned not to. Silence was safer. But inside me something shifted that night. Because that wasn't the first time they'd humiliated me. It was just the first time I was truly ready to fight back. My father, Edward, had once been my whole world. Before Clara, before the lies, before his eyes started looking past me as though I were a ghost in my own home. My mother, his first wife, died when I was 16. She'd left behind an art studio filled with canvases and half-finished dreams. After her death, the house grew cold. Then Clara arrived, with her perfect hair, her sharp perfume, and her daughter who never stopped smiling for the wrong reasons. In less than a year, she'd turned my father's grief into guilt, and me into the problem that needed to be managed. By the time I turned 27, I barely existed in that house except as an inconvenience. But still, came that night. Because despite everything, I wanted to see my father. I wanted to believe there was still a piece of him that remembered who I really was. The garden lights twinkled, and I watched him at the center of it all, surrounded by guests. His laughter deep and genuine. Clara clung to his arm like a victory medal. She caught my gaze for a second and smirked before leaning in to whisper something in his ear. He smiled again but didn't look my way. The air tasted bitter. That was when the idea I'd planned for weeks started to pulse in my mind like a secret heartbeat. Check my phone. The USB drive was already connected to the projector system. The laptop sat near the stage, ready. I took a deep breath. Tonight wasn't just a birthday party. Tonight was the night they'd finally see the truth. I remember the exact moment it began to rain slightly, a misty drizzle that softened the air. Guests moved closer to the covered patio where the speeches were about to start. I stayed at the back, still holding that pathetic slice of bread. Clara's voice rang out through the microphone. "To my dearest husband, Edward. You are my life, my partner, and the man who made me believe in love again." Fake applause followed. She was good at performances. Then my father took the mic, his voice warm and commanding. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This is more than a celebration of my years. It's a celebration of family. Family." The word echoed inside me like a cruel joke. When he finished, there was a polite round of applause, and the guests turned toward the bar. I moved then, quietly, deliberately, toward the microphone. "Wait," I said, my voice steady but sharp enough to slice through the noise. "Before we wrap up, I'd like to show something special." Dozens of eyes turned toward me. My father frowned. Clara's face went pale. "What are you doing, Carly?" she hissed under her breath as I stepped onto the small stage. I smiled, a calm, deliberate smile. "It's a surprise. For Dad." The screen behind me flickered to life. "Let's watch something special," I said. And that's when the room went silent. The first image appeared, A photograph from years ago. My mother, radiant, holding me as a baby in her art studio. The guests smiled politely. Then came the next image, Clara. But not the polished, graceful version they all knew. Well, this one was grainy, taken from a hidden camera. She was standing too close to the family lawyer, whispering something in his ear, slipping an envelope into his pocket. Whispers rippled through the crowd. My father's jaw tightened. I clicked to the next video clip. Clara in my mother's old studio, months after her death, throwing out my mother's paintings, smashing her brushes and saying, "No one needs these reminders of her anymore." The guests gasped. Someone dropped a glass. Clara lunged toward me. "Turn it off," she screamed. But it was too late. The room had gone silent, eerily silent except for the faint hum of the projector. Clara's shriek had cut through the air like glass, but no one moved. All 70 guests stood frozen, their eyes flicking between me and the massive screen behind me where my mother's art, my stepmother's lies, and my father's betrayal all collided in flickering light. The next video began to play automatically. I hadn't planned to speak yet. I wanted the images to do it for me. On the screen, a younger version of me, barely 20, sat in tears, my voice shaky but clear. "Dad, I didn't steal the money. I swear I didn't." The date stamp glowed in the corner. The camera had been one of the hidden ones I'd discovered in my mother's old office years later. The recording showed the rest of it. Clara entering the room afterward, smirking as she slid a checkbook into her purse. A murmur spread through the guests like a wave. "Oh my God," someone whispered. My father stepped forward, his face drained of color. "Carly, what is this?" I turned to him, meeting his eyes for the first time that night. "It's the truth, Dad. The truth you refused to see." He blinked rapidly, confusion clouding his face. Clara was already in motion, trying to reach the stage, her voice cracking into a desperate tone she rarely used. "She's lying. Edward, she's manipulating you, like she always has." But the next clip silenced her. The footage showed Clara and Maya, standing in my mother's art studio again years ago, mocking her work, laughing as they painted over one of her unfinished canvases. And then Clara's voice, distinct and cold. "Don't worry, Maya. Once Edward rewrites the will, this whole house will be ours. She'll be lucky if she even gets her college tuition paid." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The air felt electric. I could see the color drain from my father's face, his hands trembling slightly. "Edward," one of his old business friends said cautiously, This looks real." "It is," I said softly, stepping closer to the microphone. "I found the recordings on one of Mom's old USB drives, the same one you gave Clara to clean up years ago." Clara spun toward me, her expression feral now. "You little..." "Don't," I interrupted. "Not tonight." For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the rain tapping against the windows. Then the final clip began. It was the one I'd debated for weeks whether to show. It wasn't about me or even about my mother. It was about him. The video opened with Clara and a man sitting in a car. The timestamp was from a few months ago. The man was the family lawyer, Mr. Banks. He was holding documents with my father's name on them. Clara leaned in close and said, "Once he signs this version, we're free. Carly gets nothing, and when he's gone, we sell the house. We can't let her get in our way." The words hung heavy in the air. My father stumbled backward, gripping the edge of a table. His voice was low, almost strangled. "Clara, tell me this isn't true." But she didn't answer. Her silence was answer enough. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God," again but louder this time. My stepmother's composure cracked completely. "You don't understand," she shouted. "She's been twisting everything. She's jealous. She always has been. You were blind, Edward. Blind to what she's become." "No," he said quietly, his voice breaking. "I was blind to what you are." He turned toward me, his eyes glassy with shame. "Carly, I took a slow breath, forcing the tremor out of my voice. Don't apologize now. You let her turn me into a stranger in my own home. You believed every lie, every whisper. I used to think if I tried harder, if I stayed quiet, maybe you'd see me again. But tonight, I gestured toward the screen. This was the only way you'd listen. The microphone trembled in my hand, but I didn't care. My chest felt lighter than it had in years. Clara suddenly lunged at the projector table, yanking at the cords. Sparks flew. The screen went black. The guests screamed, stepping back in panic. For a few seconds, everything descended into chaos. Shouting, the sound of glass breaking, someone calling for security. When the lights flickered back on, Clara was standing by the wine table, her hands shaking, her perfect hair wild and undone. Maya stood beside her, pale as a ghost, whispering, "Mom, stop, please stop." But Clara's eyes were fixed on me. "You think you've won," she spat. "You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone?" I walked closer, calm, deliberate. "No, I didn't come here to humiliate you. I came here to end this. End it." She laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "You just destroyed your father's reputation, his marriage, everything." I looked at my father. His reputation was built on lies he didn't even know existed. I just showed him the truth. For once, he didn't look away. Clara turned to the guests, her voice trembling. "You all don't know her. She's unstable. She's obsessed with revenge." Maybe I was. But I didn't flinch. "Maybe," I said softly. "But at least I'm not a liar." Security arrived, and within minutes, Clara was escorted out of the hall, still screaming, still denying everything, even as whispers followed her out like a trail of smoke. Maya tried to follow, but my father stopped her. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her the way I imagine he used to look at me, searching for something that wasn't there. The guests began to leave quietly, some too embarrassed to meet my eyes, others murmuring words like shocking and unbelievable. When the last of them were gone, the silence felt endless. Only the sound of rain remained, drumming against the windows. I sat at one of the tables, staring at the untouched slices of cake. My bread still lay where I'd left it, dry, cracked, forgotten. My father sat across from me. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he said, barely above a whisper, "You had all that evidence, all these years?" He nodded. "I wasn't ready before. I wanted to believe she'd stop, that she'd realize what she was doing." He leaned back, eyes closed. "And I helped her." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. After a long pause, he opened his eyes again. "Carly, can you forgive me?" I looked at him, the man who'd once lifted me on his shoulders to hang decorations in this same house, who'd promised after Mom died that he'd always protect me. Forgiveness wasn't something I could hand out like an apology card. Not after years of silence. So I told him the truth. "I don't know yet," I said. "But I think tonight was the first step." He nodded slowly, tears glinting at the corners of his eyes. Weeks passed after that night. Clara filed for divorce before my father could. The recording circulated quietly among his business circle. She lost everything she'd schemed for. Maya moved out of the city. I didn't hate her. She was a product of her mother's poison, but I didn't miss her either. As for my father, he began visiting my mother's old studio again. Sometimes I'd find him sitting there, staring at her unfinished paintings, whispering apologies to the silence. One afternoon, he came to me with something in his hands, a small wrapped box. Inside was a single loaf of warm, freshly baked bread. "I thought," he said softly, "maybe it's time you had something better than what they gave you that night." I smiled, tears blurring my vision. "It's not about the bread, Dad." "I know," he said. "But maybe it's a start." And that's how it ended. Not with screams or vengeance, but with quiet truth. The house no longer felt like a prison. The air was lighter, the shadows smaller. I still hear echoes of that night sometimes. The whispers, the gasps, the rain, but they don't haunt me anymore. Because in our family house on my father's birthday, when all I got was a dry piece of bread, I finally learned what I truly deserved. Not pity. Not revenge. Peace. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share this story if you believe truth always finds its way to light, no matter how long it hides in the dark.